Hi everyone, it's Denise with Wondubar Crafts. We are back today to do part 2 of the crazy Stairway to Nowhere wall hanging, the little quilted wall hanging that we're doing. Just a little recap. In the last video, we pieced together 16 smaller patches with our fabric A, B, and C. And today we're going to piece these together to make larger blocks. If we have enough time, we'll complete the quilt top and hopefully do some actual quilting on the wall hanging itself. So in this part, what we're going to do is we're going to start piecing our pieces in different directions to make the pattern that we want. Okay, and so you're going to need your pins or your safety pins, straight pins, or your clips. I prefer a clip, honestly, but it's total personal preference at this point. So what we're going to do is we're going to make four larger double patches, so to speak, or four larger blocks at that point. So we're going to need 8 of these pieces. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Okay, and then I'm going to set those aside because I only want to work these right now. We'll do a little at a time. So the instructions say we want our first piece to be A, B, and C. Okay, A, B, and C. And then our second piece is going to be, it's going to go wrong side up, but what I like to do is set them together, okay? And so that I know C, B, and A, because when I turn it over, it's going to be the same C, B, and A. And then I'm going to line that edge up so that my pieces meet as close as possible. And then I'm going to take some clips. I like to clip at the top to hold it steady up there. Turn it this way, I like it this way. One in the middle. And the reason why I don't clip it on the edge is I'm going to have to stick this under the machine. So, and then one at the bottom. And I'm just going to make sure that my pieces square up the best I possibly can at this point. So in the last video, you should have measured your pieces to make sure that they're 4.5 by 4.5. And you trimmed you only need to trim excess, but if you've been checking your seam allowances along the way, you should be very, very close. If you're a scant off by like a 1/16 of an inch, I wouldn't sweat it, honestly. So we're going to need to put 4 of these together. So A, B, and C, C, B, and A, flip it over so that my right sides are together. 3 more. Take out a bunch of them. Don't have to make that annoying noise every time. Okay, so and when we get done sewing, we are going to iron it and then remeasure again. I try to get it as flat as possible. And as we get larger, I will use some straight pins when we do like the quilting portion. I'll use some of those on that. So C, B, and A, B, and C. Just take your time. There's no reason to rush. You can always pause the video to get your pieces pieced together. Because in the second part, when we do the second half, I'll just do 1 or 2 and then pause to do the rest. And you can readjust these at the sewing machine if you need to. A, B, and C, C, B, and A, and turn. And I made the instructions so that there's a visual clue there as to which direction they need to be. So that and it shows you, once you sew this, this is what you should get once it's sewn together. It should look like this: A, B, C, C, B, and A. Okay. I know for those of you who have quilted, you'll get it. You'll understand it. But for those who are new to quilting, sewing, or, are still beginners, this, I hope, will be very, very helpful. I am a visual person. I like instruction and visual, so I get it. Okay, and I have a snoozer over here. She's just tuckered out. She played all this morning with her ball outside with the chickens. So, all right, so we're going to move over to the sewing machine, and we are going to do a 1/4 inch seam allowance. Just run a seam on our on the right side, right down the middle, or not down the middle, but on the right side, right straight down a 1/4 inch. So meet me over at the sewing machine. All right, so what I've done is I moved my camera just a little bit. Hopefully you'll get a little bit better view in here, and hopefully a little more hand movement so you can kind of see what I'm doing. So I want to make sure I readjust anything. And you can sit down and do these right at the machine if you needed to. I just wanted to do it at the work table so I could show you guys. All right, so take this one out and 1/4 inch. And we are going to do another chain. At this point, you can stop if you're not confident with your, and I would go slow because your seam allowance on this one is up, and you want to make sure you don't catch that to that it flips it back. You sew it back down. All right, you can take the clips off if you want, or you can leave them on. And then we're going to chain the next piece. Just help feed it. Just make sure you don't get your fingers in the way. All right, so now what you're going to do is just do it with the other 2 pieces, and then you're going to iron your seam to the vertical line, and I will show you that in just a second. All right, so now I've sewn all 4 of my pieces together. When I go to the sewing machine, or I'm sorry, to the ironing board, I'm going to iron so that my seam allowance goes along with my vertical lines. Okay, so it will look like it will get sewn like this in the same direction. So let me go iron them, and then I'll show you what we came out with, and then we'll piece together. I hope that you've seen it, so let me do it again. So it will go to this side here so that it follows this vertical on this piece right here. Okay, so let me go iron them, and we'll go back over to the work table, and we'll piece our next 4 pieces together. All right, so sorry, I've got some really good sunlight coming in over here, so hopefully, okay, so now I have a block that should be 4.5 high, or the width wise is 4.5, and your, I'm sorry, your length should be 4.5, and your width should be 8.5. Okay, so we just take a little ruler here and just give it a quick look over here. 8.5, 4.5, we're good. And so when you're looking at your block, you're going to say, if you're a beginner, this block is so much smaller than the other strips. That's supposed to be that way. And I will tell you why. When we put your borders on, you're going to take another 1/4 inch up here, another 1/4 inch here, which will then make this strip and this strip and this strip match that. So you're not off. Okay, so don't get too antsy and think that, oh my gosh, I made a mistake. You did not. Okay, that's how it's supposed to do. Okay, so now we need to do our second set of blocks. Okay, so we have, now it's telling us our right side needs to be C, B, and A, and then we need to take a piece that goes C, B, and A. All right, and we need to put that right on top here. All right, C, B, and A. No, that way. Hold on. Yes, that's correct. Because so you're going to have a piece that is this way, because we're turning this piece. So C, B, and A needs to go on top, so that when we open it, we will go C, B, and A, B, and C. Okay? So unlike the other one where you could, we were doing it the opposite way, you'll need to make sure that this piece is wrong side up when you place it. Ooh, that sun is really coming in through the window today. It's a chilly day today, but the sun is out, so that's always good. All right. They are a little bit on that one. Ooh, I'm hitting the sun just right, and it's hitting me right in the eyes. So I may have to move over to the machine and do these. Let's see. Make sure. And you can always, like I said, you can do them right at the machine, and that way you don't have to transport them very far at all. I just wanted to show you guys on a flat surface over here. Okay, so we are going to do these with the other two so that we have 4, just like the other block we just finished. And then take them over to the machine, and we'll sew another 1/4 inch down the right side. And so let's move, let me finish this, and I'll meet you over at the sewing machine again. Okay, real quick, I just noticed too, I had showed you guys the wrong one on the second one I was doing, and I caught it, luckily. So C, B, A, C, B, and A. And that's probably why I wasn't getting a very good fit on it, because I wasn't paying attention. But you guys know me, always something. But I'll catch myself. I do. So, like I said, it's okay to make mistakes. It's not about, it really isn't about, it is about being precise, but it is about taking your time. And it's not uncommon for you to make a few mistakes. I'll do it. Just fix them. Might be a little frustrating the first couple times you do it because, oh, I gotta rip all the seams, but you'll be happy you did in the end. You will. Okay. So I put a second one together to show you guys. We fixed that one. And then let me do this last one, and I'll meet you back over at the machine. All right, so we have our other pieces all together, and I am ready to sew. Once again, 1/4 inch. Just take my time going down those right edges. Now with this one, your seam is upside down, so just take your time and just kind of feel for it and make sure this seam lays flat as you're pushing it through, as you're feeding it through your machine. Take your time. Mine likes to catch on this little lip, so I have to lift it up and lay it back down flat. And of course, those of you who are a little more advanced in quilting, if you want to give tips that you think will help others, please don't hesitate to leave comments below and let others know. I mean, this is how we all learn and grow. Just lifting up that flap to make sure that it lays back down flat. All right, so now I'm going to sew the last two. I'm going to go ahead and iron it. Same way, I'm going to iron it towards my vertical line. And so I will show you the chain link, show you again where to iron to, and I'll meet you back here in just a few seconds here as soon as I get these other ones sewn up. Okay, so I have all 4 of my pieces chain linked. When I go to iron, I'm going to make sure that I iron towards my vertical line, just like that. Oop. So it looks like this. And these ones, because of the direction that they go, will all be in the same direction. Okay? And it happens sometimes in quilting. You can always, if you don't like it, you can iron if your fabric is dark enough, you could iron it all in the same direction if you so choose. I find that it lays flatter that way. Okay, so then when you open it up, it's going to look like this. Okay, so let me go iron them, and then I'll show you what the finished piece looks like, and then we will start piecing those other pieces that we just did to these pieces to make 4 big blocks. Okay. Okay, so now this is what our block should look like. Oh, let me get my tags out the way here. All right, so we have 2 sets. And what I like to do, and you don't have to, I will mark these ones A and these ones B in a pile. So I'm going to just scooch them up a little bit. Now, I need to take an A block so that my A, B, and C, C, B, and A are facing up. Then I'm going to take my next block, and I'm going to ensure that when I flip it over, because it's going to get sewn to look like this. All right, that, and the diagram shows my A with wrong side up, A, B, and C, A, B, and C are up. So now what you want to do is you're going to ensure that these middle seams here, right, are bumping up against each other. And what I mean is I've got one seam allowance facing, it's ironed to the left, and this one is ironed to the right so that it's sandwiched together. Let's see if we can get a good enough picture up here. So that it makes like a natural groove. And this will help you align your pieces. Okay, we need to make sure that that's the right way here. There we go. Because we're going to sew, we're going to turn it and sew it so that bottom seam, so that when they're open, this is the pattern you should get for your block. So that your C fabric makes that first staircase there, okay? And then your A will make one below it. So what I want to do is make sure those seams are butted up against each other. And there's a little tip in there in the instructions on doing that. So what I'm going to do is get them butted up really nice so that my seams match up, and I'm going to clip it. Now I can work on matching up my ends, and if they're fairly squared, you shouldn't really have too much of a problem here with it. And then I'm going to clip it. Oop, starting to fray on me. All right. And you have to work with it a little bit, because as your pieces get bigger, you're going to want to make sure they line up good. Because this is the side I'm going to sew. But I want to make sure that they lay nice and flat and even. And then I'm going to double check my seam just to make sure it's still butted up. I'm going to lay it down. And then you just repeat that with the next 4. That gives you the 4 big blocks. So let me get all these pinned together and move back over to the machine, and we will sew them all with a 1/4 inch seam. All right, so now I have my pieces all clipped together. And I want to just double check, make sure, do any last minute adjustments at the machine. Double check that seam. Yeah, it slipped a little bit, so I'm going to have to readjust here. But it is important that that center seam, because this is what connects their blocks, you want that seam to be matched up so that your block flows. Okay. So remember there, I'm going to use 1/4 inch seam allowance, and I'm just going to take my time because I have different directional seams here, and make sure that they all match up well. Now see here, I can feel it lifting. I'm just going to lift the fabric up and let it lay down again. Because I know that the fabric under here is going in the direction of the sewing machine, so I have to just take my time. And same thing with the next piece. I'm just going to make sure everything is laying well. Feed it up underneath so that my feed dogs pick it up. And so. Just take your time. I find when I take my time, my pieces match so much better. And you may have a piece that is just off by a little bit. It's not perfect. It's okay. So long as you keep that 1/4 inch and it's squared well, you'll be okay. And then just continue with the last 2 pieces. Iron it so that your seam is in the downward position. You can take a look at the instructions to see what direction that block needs to be, because we're actually sewing it so that it's on the bottom. So this will be the bottom where we're sewing. So when you open it up, sew your iron your seam allowance to flow towards the bottom so that they all go in the same direction. And then I'll meet you back over at the workstation. All right, so this is what your piece should look like. All right, and this, if you look, my seams are aligned really nice. And I will give you a little tip in what I do. When I iron, because you'll have a little bit of bulk here and here where your seams kind of come together, if it doesn't seem like it wants to iron flat, I have just this little spray bottle full of water. That's all I put in it is water. And I spray the back here and then put my hot iron on the back side to kind of get it to smooth down a little bit, to let them get those layers to kind of lay flat again. You're not going to get it completely flat because, let's face it, there's seams in there. It's going to have a little bit, but you want it to lay as flat as possible. And I got this at Walmart. It is like an Equate little spray bottle, 8 ounce. I got it over in the hair department because the spray is more of like a misty spray that you would use, to spray your hair. And I like that better for ironing. I've bought other ones that were bigger, and they seem to stream more than they spritz. So now what you're going to do is you're going to want to square off these pieces and make sure that they are as square as you can. You don't want to take it down below. I have an 8.5 inch square here. And if I line it up, they look pretty good. I've got a couple edges that are a little raw, but if you look at them, here, I have one that's just off, so we can trim it up. And how I'm going to do that is, okay, you can do it either way, but this is closer to me. So my 4.5, or my 4 inch mark, because this is 8.5, that's right in the center. Okay, because each end here is a 1/4 inch, so it's going to make it an 8.5 inch square. But I want to put my seam right there at the 4, and then try and make sure that it's on the 4 here. Anything excess, I'm going to square it down, but I want to make sure that I'm not off. It's not going to be too far off. So I'll square that side. That side looks okay. Really don't want to take too much off that side. And I'm going to do very carefully. Ooh. All right, I'm going to turn it. because I don't want to screw these squares up. Okay, get the corners in there. Put my seams on my 4s. And you don't have to run out and get an 8.5 inch. You can get a bigger one and you can just square it like I showed you before in the other video. Just use your cutting board and square it that way. Okay. So I'm happy. This edge might be just a little bit off, but I don't want to take it off. I don't want to take too much. So we're going to do that with all 4. Get my corners in here. And this one is looking pretty good. It might be a little off on this corner and this corner, so I'm going to turn it. And it's okay to turn them because I'm going to show you which way to stack them again so that they're right the way they need to be. Okay, this one's like just a smidgen. It's almost just, I mean, just a little bit off. But let me turn on the other side because I think this side might be. And it's good to do this because then when you put your bigger pieces together, they're going to lay so much nicer. And this one's only about an 8. All right. So let's see if I can get those kind of back in the same stack here. And you'll do this with all 4 pieces. So that now you understand why it's important to get your seams correct and butted up together because it makes it so much easier. That one's not even hardly, it's like just a fraction over here. I'm not even going to worry about it. But if you get those seams to butt up just right, it makes squaring so much easier. It makes your pieces go together so much easier, and they will line up so much nicer. Okay, this one's got just a smidgen over here. Let me just make sure that my seams are correct. And by using this little square, I don't even have to square it on the table if I don't want to, because it's an 8.5 inch. And I think you can go online and buy different sizes if you want, depending on the square that you want or that you're going to make. Because like I said, I have a 6-inch one. I have the 8.5, because those are typically the sizes that I will do. But I think you can even get one up to like a 12-inch, like I showed you with the other one. For stripping, you can also use the same thing. You just find your middle guide and align it. All right, so all 4 of my pieces are together. And so we are essentially going to now do a 2 and 2 again. So I'm going to take 1, and I want to make sure that it faces, so my A, B, and C, C, B, A, just as the diagram shows, C, B, A, B, C. Now, when I take this piece and flip it over so that my wrong side is up, I should have CBA, 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 CB, and A. Okay? And we're going to do the same thing. I'm going to show you with this one. And you may need a few more pins or a few more clips because they are bigger. But I'm going to do this one here because I like doing them over at the machine. I seem to have a little more light, better light over there. But I'm going to butt these seams up. Now these seams are going in the same direction because this is how the panel is. But we want to make sure that they are butted up correctly. And pin it. Okay. I'm going to lay it back the way it's supposed to be with my C on the top, C out here. Okay, and then And if you want, because it is a big floppy or big piece, you can make sure that your seam is butted up down here as well. And clip it. That way it'll just help with any shifting or puckering or anything like that with the fabrics. Let me double check because this is the side we're going to. So, and clip it. Now I would normally do this on a flat place over there so that it's flat, and I will recheck it when we go to the machine, because I did have one piece on here that, like I said, it did not sit right. It wasn't butted up. I wasn't seeing the seam, so I had to put my readers on. Then I just took the seam allowance out and just ironed it back out and re-seamed it. So you're going to do this with all four in the same direction, okay? So that, remember, just follow the guideline to set it on top. And then when you open it, let me show you. When we have an A, B, and C, and then a CBA, when it's opened, it will look like this. So then your staircase is going to start to continue here and begin here and here, okay? So you only have these two pieces to put together. Actually, let me just go ahead and put it together for you one more time here so that I can try and get it evened out here. We'll just start it there. Get it lined up and squared off. And this one, you will also need to sew it very slowly so that your seams don't, you know, buckle up underneath and flip over on your machine. And it's okay if they square up over here, awesome. Sometimes you might be off just a little bit, but don't let it throw you. The important thing is to get your seam allowance side correct. Make sure it's on there. I'm going to pin it. And you can certainly use more pins if you feel you need it more secure. And then we'll go back over to the machine. You're just going to do the same 1/4 inch seam. Very, very simple. Like I said, this block is very easy. It looks complicated because we do some little twisting with it, but it's very easy. It's straight stitching, no additional, you know, corner pieces or anything like that to have to do right now. So, all right, so let's go back over to the machine, do those 2 1/4 inch seam allowances, and we'll keep moving. We'll keep moving on. Okay, so I've zoomed out just a little bit more because it is a much bigger piece. And so you can kind of get a better look at it. Once again, I just want to make sure everything's lined up. 1/4 inch seam. Just take your time, kind of feel, because you've got some seams that are going horizontally underneath, so just make sure that they're not flipped up. If they start to pucker like that one, just pick the fabric up and let it lay naturally back down. Okay, move my clip out of the way there. Nice and slow. And a key is not to watch the needle go up and down, but to keep your eye on the fabric and the seam allowance, not the needle going up and down. We got some fraying going on over here on this fabric. It's probably because I pulled some, I think this is the piece I kind of pulled apart. take that clip off, sew it all the way to the end, and let's make sure I'll butt it up correctly. We shifted a little bit, so it's good to do another little double take on there. Okay, so now I'm just ready to feed it in. Chain my pieces together. And since I took that clip, I'm going to hold my finger here just until I get it to the guide here. So that it doesn't shift. This one's a little upside down, so I just want to take my time, make sure it gets under the foot. And voila, we have now 2 blocks sewn together, and we're ready, and they're chain linked together. When you open them up, I don't know if you're going to be able to see all of it, but this is now how it's going to look once we've ironed it. Now's a good point before you take it to the ironing board, which is what I should have done last time, is just check to make sure that my seams are all lining up, which that one is. Let's check this one and make sure. Yep, looking good, looking good. Okay, so now I'm ready to go take it over to the ironing board, and I'm going to iron it. When I iron it, okay, I'm going to, since there's a vertical line here and a vertical line here, I'm going to just naturally, I'm going to iron it to the right side. I'm going to do the same thing with the other one, because when we sew these down here, we want them down on the bottom. We want them to line up down here. Okay, so go ahead and take it over to your ironing board and iron it. Remember, just seam allowance to the right side. I'll meet you over at the work table. All right, so now you should have 2 panels that look like this. And this is exactly how we're going to sew it on there so that our staircase continues all the way up. All right, so, but before we do that, we need to make sure that our pieces are where they need to be. So this should be 8.5 in length, your height, and 6.5 wide. So you will need a longer ruler if you need to do any trimming. All right, so I'm going to take it to the edge here, and I'm going to take it down here and lay it as flat as I can. And it looks like I'm going to mark it off at the 6.5 with this ruler. And let's see, we are about spot on. Okay, so then I want to make sure that down here I'm 8.5. Line it up on this side, and it looks like we are 8.5 right about there. Make sure this is lined up. I have a little gap down here, but I am not going to sweat it because it's so minute. All right, and a little one up here. So down here, it might have shifted a little bit to get this, but this part here is more important to me to make sure that these pieces line up than to have that little smidgen off. Okay, so I'm going to set that piece aside. same thing. Let's do our length first, since we're already here. And I can line that line right there to make sure it's the same all the way across on my board. Okay, and make sure that this is all lined up here the same. And we are looking good. All right, so same thing for our length. Okay, stick it to the edge down there and square it off there. 16.5. Make sure all that lines up. Same. And making sure this end is, and we might be a little long here. Let's check it. Okay, way too long here. Oh, just a hair. But I'm okay with that because it's just a fraction and I really don't want to make any more cuts if I don't have to. So my diagram tells me that I need to have A, B, C, and then this one should be C, B, A, and across, and we are good. So I am going to take my second panel and I'm going to lay it just like that because that's how the pattern is going to go. Now what I want to do is flip it on top of it because we're going to sew this bottom seam here, and we're going to do the same thing. We want to make sure that this middle seam butts up here. I'm going to put my readers on because I don't want to be ripping stitches again. All right, so I'm going to grab my piece here, and I want to make sure it lines up, and I do know that this piece is a little longer, and that's okay. Right. And you probably hear my little rooster. That's onyx out there. The rooster kind of doesn't have quite the same crow. They're different. Then here, you're going to have where your block here and your block here meet up. So we want to make sure that seam allowance is butted up. Aligning my corners. I'm going to be off just a little bit there, but I am okay with that because it's a very small amount. I'm not going to sweat it. Because if you get too obsessive, you could spend you will over frustrate yourself. Now remember, these pieces are going to be opposite here. So we want them to line up really nice. Okay, so now I have my 3 seams all together, and then I'll clip it here and I'll clip it on the other side, but I'm going to do that over at the machine just so I have a little more light and a little more room to kind of get it evened out. But I want to lay it as close as possible so that they overlap, you know. And then we are going to take and do a 1/4 inch seam all the way down that bottom, and then our block, our one main block piece is done. So meet me back over at the machine. Okay, so I have clipped it all the way across over all of my seams here, top and bottom, and then clipped the back side here so that those stay together and won't shift. It should help me keep any of my fabric from shifting while I am going through the sewing machine. So once again, we're going to have layers back here, so we want to take our time. fold that seam down. Okay, make sure nothing is puckering. Okay, it's shifted a little bit. Just want to make sure it's good. Just lifting up that fabric to make sure that seam lays nice and flat. It doesn't bend over or tuck the wrong way. All right, so now we have that one big center block already completed. Taking off my clips, and I'm going to sew it seam downward in the down position. Okay, and it might take a little bit to work because you got some different pieces, but remember, use that tip I showed you. If you have problems with it bunching or not wanting to go, just give it a little spray on the back side. It'll help iron it. And so we're going to, here's our seam. We're going to sew it, or we're going to iron it so that the seam is in the down position. And then we'll meet back over and take a look at what we got before we move on to our borders. Okay, so here is your center block. All right, and so take a minute and relish in it, because you've put in a lot of work to get this center block done, right? So one thing I just want to mention, that the instructions do tell you that picture shows that your A block here should be up here. You should have a C up here, and then an A down here and a C up here. But if you turn it, you can make your staircases go in the other direction if you so choose. You can make them go long ways, whatever way you want, okay? But I happen to like it this way, personally. I don't know why. I like this, my staircases to go from, the bottom left up to the upper right. All right, so yay! Now it's time to put the borders on. All right, so we have, you should have cut 16.5 by 2.5 inch borders here. And then what we're going to do is just make sure if you have directional fabric, it's going in the correct direction. This is, we do our vertical ones first. All right, and there is a tip and some, a a tip if you want to go long vertical instead of a long horizontal style. You just do these opposite. Just want to make sure these are going in the right direction here and they look okay. This one's, I think, upside down because my flower needs to go that way because of my stem. So now what we're going to do, set this one to the side. Okay, I want to make sure that my block is facing the direction that I want it, which it is not. There we go. No. All right. Why am I looking at this? There it goes. I was looking at it cross-eyed, I guess. Sorry. Sorry if that made you dizzy. Okay, so now I'm going to turn it just so that I can get this evened up. And then you can pin or clip it. I'm going to clip it. Okay. Make sure it covers all my edges and it's straight on there across the bottoms here. Just put a few, and then you can attach both borders, and then you're just going to sew one down one side and then turn it, sew down the other. Okay, I'm going to turn it the other direction and make sure that I am okay. This was that side. This is going to be like that. So just want to make sure my directions go the correct way. And if you do happen to find that maybe you cut it a little bit shy, it's okay. What I would suggest is the side that you're sewing on, whatever the top is going to be, get that aligned, and then you can always trim the bottom if you need to. But hopefully it won't. You'll get a nice even piece there. And then once we get done with the borders, I think we're going to be done with this video because it will be pretty lengthy, and we'll just have a third video, no biggie, to do the batting, backing, and this quilting and the finishing with the binding. So, all right, so let's see, yep, that's the direction I want it to go in. So I'm going to sew this side first, turn it, and sew that side. So let's head over to the machine. All right, so now let me move my mouse over here. I want to ensure that I'm even when I get this going. And just take your time, because remember, you got layers underneath. So same thing, just take your time. Quarter-inch straight down. Pretty simple. Okay, my edges just, there we go. The nice thing about this machine, it has a nice little projector on it, which projects different lines, and I can set them at different increments. So if I'm sewing like a garment and I need a larger seam allowance, I can do so. I think I keep nudging that. All right, I'm going to take one of these pins and these clips, and I'm just going to clip it to the bottom just to kind of help secure it. And I'll show you that here as soon as we get down that way. Here is what I did. I just clipped it down here just to keep it secure. Get it out a little bit better. And you can do that to begin with. I just move it down. It just helps me so that when I take this clip off, it will stay secured. I can take that clip off and I can turn and just rotate over to the other side. Saves us from coming back and forth on the machine. Go ahead and clip that on the top here. And I'm just going to do the same thing I did on the other side. Very, very easy. But if you took your time and you pieced everything the way was shown, I'll bet you're smiling and happy right now. See how nice your center block came out. It is well worth the wait. That's like with any crafting project, really. If you just take your time, think about what you're doing, and because I'll admit sometimes I rush and I make a lot of mistakes, and it's frustrating, especially if that's like the only material you have or supplies you have of that and you can't get a hold of it again. It's annoying. And I'm not pushing my fabric. I'm letting my feed dogs just pull the fabric through. I'm just holding it in place, and as it moves, I just move my hand on top. So we are done with the vertical borders, and we need to go over to the ironing board, and we're going to iron them to the dark side of the fabric. So outward like that. And then I'll meet you back over at the work table, and we'll clip the horizontal borders on next. All right, let's see, let's straighten this. And that is our vertical borders. If you find that you're off here, like this one's just a minuscule, I'm not going to sweat it. I mean, I guess I can show you real quick if I need to trim it. It's small enough, but just make sure that it's like on the bottom. If you find that your piece is too long when you're sewing it, I'm just going to trim it up against this line. I mean, it's that small. That small. And let's do this one too. It's off just a little bit. And it could have just been how you cut it on the rotary. board after you made your strips. Could have been just a smidgen too long. That one, just a little bit. I mean, it was off just a little. Okay, so now we are ready to put our vertical or horizontal borders on. All right, sorry. My son took off for the weekend to go visit his friends, and so he's barking because he hears the car. All right, so I want that one to go that way and this one to go this way. So slide this down, and it looks like it may be cut just a little long, so I'm going to just make sure that it hangs off on one end. So I only need to trim one end. And ooh, that's like quite a bit off. I must have cut them at 21 instead of 20 and a half. But that's okay. Better to be long than to be too short. I think what I'm going to do is trim that real quick so I don't have to trim it later. So because I know this piece is I'm just going to square it up. Yeah, I did. I cut it at 21. See? It happens. Okay, I'm going to line my grid up. Just cut it off. There we go. And the other one's probably they're going to be the same way, but let me get this one pinned or double check it. Make sure. Yeah, okay. That's my top piece. I'll bet you this one's cut the same length too. Yep, it sure is. Let me cut this one down. Sorry about that. Oh, that one's a little bit longer. All right, 20 and a half. Okay. And double check it. Yeah, it's still a little bit long, but I can trim that end. I'm not going to trim it again. I'll trim it after I sew it. Okay. Okay. So, let's see. Do I want that flower going upward? I think I do. All right. So, and then we just pin it on, just like we did with the vertical. turn it and just do the other side. And then we're going to take it over the machine and sew it. And I'll meet you over there. Okay, so I have readjusted the camera once again, hopefully so you can see a little bit more of this. And off we go. So 1/4 inch seam allowance. And just slow and steady. Making sure that my seams from the inner border block or inner block are laying down straight. Just taking my time. I want to try to keep this as flat as possible on my workstation or on my machine if possible. Don't want to take any chances that something will pucker. Alright, got one border on, so I'm pretty sure you guys can figure out how to do the other one. Just turn it around and do the same thing on the other side, then take it to your ironing board and iron to the dark side, towards the dark side or darker fabric. And I'll meet you back over at the workstation again, and we're going to show you what our block now, what our actual wall hanging will look like. All right, you ready to see? Here we go. So let's see if we can push this up a little bit. There we go. So that is what your quilt top is going to look like. So this, I think, is a good stopping point for this video. And in the next video, we are going to put our backing, we're going to layer it, we're going to pin it, and then we are going to stitch in the ditch, which is just a style of stitching in the seam line there, and to quilt it. And then I'm going to show you how to make some binding to bind and finish the quilt. So hopefully we'll get it all finished up in next video. I hope you guys are having a lot of fun with this. If you're just watching to check it out and see if you think you can, I sure hope you try. It is not a hard quilt at all. It looks difficult because of the pattern, but like I said, it's all the same block. They're just turned in different directions to make a different geometrical design. So anyways, Oh, before we do, if any of your ends need to be trimmed, if it was too long, just do like I showed you on the vertical. Just trim it off in that one section. Don't take the whole piece all the way up, just the end that needs to be trimmed there. And, you know, we're getting there. So anyways, guys, thanks so much for joining me today, or in this video. I'm going to, like I said, all the videos will be uploaded back to back, so there won't be any breaks in between them. So you can, if this is a project you want to do, you can go from video to video. So until next time, guys, I'm so excited. Plenty of hugs, loves, and blessings. Mwah. Bye, guys.